Hi, welcome back to the We're Not From Hollywood podcast. I'm Brandon Reines.
Hi, I'm Faizel Jamama, and today we have Laura Fuentes, star of stage and screen.
Oh, wow.
Thanks for being on the show.
Of course, anytime.
Laura is a newer member to our team. She's funny enough, she's new, but she's already been in a few things already, so she's kind of she's catching up quickly. But maybe start off with just tell us about how you first got involved in acting.
Oh gosh, that we go back to me and acting go back to like when I was very little. I started out in any sort of performing acts as a dancer. I started dancing around the age of 4. So very, very young. I garnered a passion for the arts. And acting came into place around like third grade. So I was like 8, and I took some acting classes, and I found so much love for the craft and for I became a huge lover of films and music and any sort of art in general. So I knew that that was somehow going to be a part of my life as long as I was alive. I knew that very young. So I started acting around 8, but more seriously acting obviously a little bit later in life. I'd say around high school is when I finally garnered the strength to make it into some sort of career for myself. So I'd say that around 16 years old, I started realizing that not only did I like performing, but I liked creating. So I wrote theater plays. I did my first film at 17. And well, it's just been honestly just rolling with whatever comes my way. And I'm 21 now. So really just keeping going that dream since very, very, very young.
What was your experience with your first film? How was that shooting that at 17? Was it feature length or was it a short film?
Oh, it was a short. So when I was 17, it was about like COVID times. So filming in general was very weird, if you recall. So it was supposed to be a stage play, but because COVID restrictions didn't allow us to make it a stage play, we decided to make it into a short for this like high school one act festival. And we didn't have much time to film it. We had an hour, I think 2 hours max to film this whole thing. So basically we filmed it as if we were presenting it on a stage, but we had a really high quality camera. We had like, I think one of the best cameras I've ever worked with in my life, really. And I wanted to add so much to this, but because of the limits with time that were giving to us, we were only able to film like 2 different angles, like 3 different angles maybe. But I was actually 2 months before my short film, I had been in surgery for my leg. So I was spending like my afternoons in crutches, like setting up the space because we're filming in a basement. And it was very individual because I didn't have a big team. It was like the 2 camera people that were helping everybody in this festival, and then my actors who were lovely, and just the director of the festival. So it was a very different experience than I would have liked for my first short, but I ended up doing something a little bit more complex a couple months after that because I realized, oh wow, if this is the how much I wanted to do with something so minimal, I wonder what I could do if I had the time and resources to apply my inspirations, my craft into it. So yeah, I think my first one was very limited. I definitely have more to say about my second short.
Was it a live play situation, or was it you had an hour to film and then they gave you the footage and then you went off and edited it and then presented it later?
Yeah, it was the latter. It was basically they gave us that footage. It was like super high quality footage. And they basically were like, run with it. And I had an editor helping me out. And he was very lovely. And he was like, okay, well, I know what you want to do with this. We're gonna play around because it's really high quality footage. We can actually zoom in. We can play around with the footage that they've given us to create different shots. So that was a bit of a lucky part of the experience, is that because the footage was so clear, we were able to play with post-production a lot more. Yeah.
What would you characterize your style? Are you still building your style? Are you still like, what would you say your artistic style is leaning towards?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I haven't produced in quite a long time. I've been wanting to get back into producing, but honestly, with my style of writing and the visions that I have for my projects, it's fairly consistent of very aestheticized shots and very like I like the to build a story first and then build the look and then kind of merge them together. So my style is definitely still being developed, but I think as an actor, I've definitely established myself a little bit more as the years have gone by. But because I'm so young, I still have so much time to figure myself out. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but you know, you never really stop learning. You never really stop establishing yourself as an artist. So, you know, I just see. I don't really have any concrete answer for that, really.
So your first time acting with Higher Universe was on Grotesque 2, and you were actually one of the very few roles that we actually auditioned for. So tell us about how all that came about.
Oh yeah, so the auditioning process for Grotesque was definitely a very, not necessarily secretive, but definitely you guys want to keep it to a specific to the film cruise in Edmonton, because I didn't know about the audition until somebody from a film crew of a film I was working on told me, hey, you'd be really good for this. So I'm in film groups on Facebook, but I hadn't heard anything about Higher Universe other than I knew of Grotesque. But it wasn't until I was working on a film called Dark Match that I was doing background coordination for, that one of the camera operators that I knew from back in the day was like, oh my gosh, there's this audition. I think you'd really love it. I think it really fits you. You should definitely audition. And I auditioned for it literally on the last day at the hour that it was due. And and later on, I learned that Julie's pretty particular about letting in late auditioners. So I got really lucky with the fact that I did it on the hour, and I auditioned for it. I really loved the script that you guys gave me. I was like, oh, I really hope I get to be a part of this project in some way. And then you guys gave me a call back, and I was like, okay, this is going good. I'm excited for this. I did the call back, and then I learned that Eureka, who plays the character I auditioned for, actually was auditioning for the same character, and we were friends from before from other projects. We met at the U of A, and we were like, hold on, you're auditioning for Cindy? I'm auditioning for Cindy. So it wasn't a competition at all. It was like, well, whoever gets it, happy for you. This is awesome. That's really how the film community works here in Edmonton, where it's like so supportive. And I knew Eureka from a long time ago, so I was like, I'm excited for you if you get this, and I look forward to hearing about it. But apparently you guys liked me so much, you called me and you said, listen, Cindy is not the character that we want to put you in, but we have this other character that we think you'd fit if you would like to be a part of the project. And I immediately went, yes, anything I can do with this project. So I was really happy that I got to participate in some way, even though I wasn't going to play Cindy, because it gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people and to, you know, it was basically like, I knew we were going to be in a summer camp. So I was like, I'm going to be able to get like a 3-day vacation from work. This is going to be awesome.
How much of a vacation was it?
Oh, it was like going back to high school. We were just every single day after we were filming, we were drinking, and it was like as if I was friends with these people immediately. I knew no one going into it. I got warned by people saying, listen, Laura, you're going to the middle of nowhere to film a movie.
That's actually so funny.
You're 20 years old, Laura, be careful.
You're going out into the middle of the woods with this guy who says he's gonna make a movie with you.
Yeah. And it's like, you're gonna get killed in this movie. I just tread lightly. But
so funny that you say that too, because like honestly, it never even crossed my mind that that would be a concern. But when you told me that, then I was like, yeah, looking at it from the other side of the, if you don't know us, then, you know, like come into the woods with us and make a movie. And, you know, it just sounds,
Yeah.
it sounds so much scarier than, of course, then once you're on the inside, you probably see why we didn't think of it, because it's like, oh, we're all
Oh yeah,
friends.
I didn't even think
So,
twice. I was just like, Brandon wants me to go out to the woods? Sure, all
yeah.
right, I'll be there, whatever.
Yeah.
Can I get a ride?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my mom drove me to Pigeon Lake because she was like, listen, I just need to know where you're going. I need to know where you are. I don't live with my parents, so I'm very independent, but you know, a mother's love is always there where it's like, I don't know if I want to let my 20-year-old daughter go film a movie in the middle of nowhere. So she drove me in, and then she saw what the scene was like, and she was like, okay, you have you can use like long distance calling if you need. I don't care about the price. If you need to escape, just let us know. But when I went into the read through, I was like, I don't know anyone. This is really scary because especially when you enter a new project, there's at least someone you know. And I knew Eureka and I knew Ovase, and that's the only two people that I knew. But Eureka convinced me to come after the read through for drinks to get to know people, and I'm glad she did that because I don't know if I hadn't gone out with you guys for drinks after the read through, I would have gone into it completely blind in June, and I I definitely would. It would have been a little bit more scary, but I got to know so many people so quickly, and everybody was so welcoming and so lovely and so excited to have a newcomer that they were like, okay, let's first day of shooting, let's go drinking, and I was like, okay.
It was so funny too,
So
because like I'm so used to having, like, it's a very tight team that we have. And I remember even at the read through we had, I remember sitting there and you were kind of like on the other side of the room. And I remember leaning to Julie and I'm like, who is that over there? And she's like, oh, that's Laura. She's playing Clea. And I was like, oh, right, the new person.
yeah.
Because everyone else there, it's like basically it was almost the same cast from the first movie coming back playing new people. But I'm, you know, I'm so glad like we let new people in once in a while, because then we we get to meet a fantastic new actor. And you ended up being in other projects. You were in I'm Haunted 2 that we just
Yeah.
released a couple weeks ago. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm Haunted too. I watched it with you guys as a mini pre-premiere before it came out because I was so excited. I've watched found footage movies before, but I had never imagined what the process of filming one would be, because I've always been in traditional film sets where, you know, you have the camera, you have the boom operator, it's quiet on set, very, very sticking to the rules of filmmaking. So the process of filming it was very new for me because it was a different kind of acting where I feel like with Grotesque it was supposed to be over the top. It was supposed to be like almost cartoonish, but Haunted 2 is supposed to look like real life, like a blog, like as if I was talking to a real person. It's my friend and she's filming me, and what the hell, I'm getting summoned. So the process of it was different, but I really liked it because it gave us a lot to work with, right? You tell me, okay, well, this isn't in the script, but start opening a bottle of wine and pretend that, you know, you don't want to be filmed. And I had to think, if I was in Cassie's mindset and my friend is about to, you know, sacrifice me, and she's filming me opening a bottle of wine, I'm like, I'm not ready yet. How would I act? How would I be? So it really was taking a lot of my own personal fears of like, how would I act in the situation, and would Cassie act in that situation, and just really diving into reality rather than cartoonish that I'm used to through theater. Theater is very over the top, and horror comedy like Grotesque is very over the top. So it was really fun. It was different filming it, but I wouldn't say it was bad different. It was just a different experience. So it was really fun. And Danielle did such a good job. She memorized all those lines. And she was always, I would see her in the corner just looking at the script, and I was like, I can't imagine just all reading all of that and like memorizing all of that script, all of those long monologues, and making it look as real as she made it out to be. So yeah, overall, it's just that it was a different kind of a style of filmmaking I wasn't used to, but it's fun. I feel like now that I went into it with people that I knew, and I felt a lot more comfortable starting the project.
Yeah, it's funny, like, too, because it is a different kind of acting, and there were times like, yeah, Danielle did great, but there were times where I had to remind her, like, it's like you're acting too much, like, don't. And it's kind of hard to explain because you're basically telling someone like, don't act.
Don't breathe
Yeah.
too much.
So she would try to put like a performance into it, and it's like normally that would be good, but this is different. So it's like try not to perform, like, so you have to just play everything down, which is the exact opposite you do in a normal movie. It's like try to almost like try to make it less interesting because that makes it more real.
Yeah.
But it's hard to balance because you can't make it boring, you monotone. So it was really hard to balance out. And like I said to Elizabeth, like in her interview, that it's not like in another movie where you could kind of hide if say your performance isn't so great for a particular take, you can kind of hide behind the other actors. Where if it's like it's just your face on camera talking for like 20 minutes, like if you suck, it's gonna be painful. So there's a lot of pressure on you to perform that.
Yeah, but I mean, what I keep seeing Haunted 2 growing viewership in YouTube, and that just proves how good Danielle did at her role, right? I mean, it's hard enough to put yourself in that vulnerable position of I have to strip away everything I've learned about acting and become the character itself, right? So I applaud her for that, and I'm so proud and so happy that Haunted 2 has been fairly popular on YouTube and growing in viewership every day.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that like yeah, the first, of course, the first one too, it started spiking as soon as the second one came out, and we're going to be shooting the third one. I'm almost done the script. I'll probably finish it next like day or two, and we're going to shoot that. We might need you back for that one, just
Woo!
so you know, more of a cameo role, but we'll explain that. But yeah, it's just surprising to me that it's like so popular because it started off as something that Elizabeth and I just did for fun, basically to kill time between bigger projects. It's like, what if we do this thing? It's like super easy, super cheap, and then it's like my most famous movie. It's so bizarre that, and even on just like on the internet when the second one came out, there's some the comments were overwhelmingly positive, I'd say, but there was one person that she was like kind of criticizing them, but she was criticizing like both movies, specific parts in them, but all the comments were in the same day, which means she watched both movies back to back in the same day.
Hey.
So I'm like, I don't even do that for movies I like. So the fact that she just sat through and watched all the movie to be able to pick it apart, it's like, even if you didn't like it, I still take that as a compliment that we held her interest for that long.
Now, Laura, you recently directed a play, right, at the Fringe.
I did.
How did you find your experience with directing? This wasn't your first experience directing. Was your first experience directing a play? Is that right?
So my first experience directing a play, I actually wrote a script and presented it at right before COVID, the year before at Next Fest, and I directed it at 16. So it wasn't my first experience directing at all. I feel like directing film and directing theater is fairly different because the method of how the performance goes about is very different. With film, you can retake it as many times as you'd like and just pick the best one. With theater, every performance is different. It depends on the crowd, really, how the reception goes. And the show that I did for Fringe this year was extremely audience participation heavy. It was I find myself being attracted to abstract and surrealist theater for some reason, whether I get cast in it or I direct it. It's just the way it's gone. And I find so much humor in absurdism. So when I got the opportunity to direct the show, I was like, oh, the curse of the theater absurdist director strikes again. But it was so much fun because I was directing it as I was doing Grotesque and Haunted 2, and they were just such different projects back to back that I was able to just apply things to each of them, right? Like the absurdist of What the Hell Was That, which was the show that I did for Fringe, added a lot to my character Clea, who is just a bitch, but it was supposed to be an over the top bitch. You know, if you saw What the Hell Was That, it's a one man show, and the lead, is an absolute asshole. So it was really fun to play around with that and to direct a show so random at the same time as, like, I just came back from being killed. Okay, let's make a song about Elvis Presley being stealing from black creators.
And I actually came out and saw your play, and I was pretty sure it was the only Fringe play I saw that year, or maybe there was
Really?
two. But yeah, I came out there and saw it, and
Yeah.
it was quite the experience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was supposed to kind of leave you thinking, like, what the hell was that? I mean, I think that was But what's funny about it is that one of the producers from Grotesque and from your team, Sam Au, came to the show not knowing it was my show. And he came in and he was like, "Oh, Laura, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Sam, this is my show. What are you doing here?" So it was so funny because the more I go into the industry of film and the industry of theater and just arts in general, Edmonton, it's such a small community that there were people that I knew that came to my show that they were like, that they didn't know it was my show, and they were like, "Oh, that's awesome. That's great. I didn't recognize. I didn't even put two and two together." So yeah, it's so fun seeing people come support shows from film, and it was such a wonderful surprise to see you and Danielle come in.
Yeah, we were happy to help support things. Like, I'm not a theater person, and like, I mean, since I've started doing movies, I get invited to attend more of them.
Yeah.
And there's still a part of me, I just don't get it. I just find it so, like, when I'm doing film, like, it's like I fit in here. As soon as I'm like in a room with theater, all of a sudden I just feel like it's like I don't belong here. It's like it's uncomfortable. I'm always worried that the performers are going to start talking to me or interacting with me, and so I always sit in the back corner and like, oh my god, I hope no one talks to me. It's just such a different type of performing art that I have respect for it. It's like, wow, these people are talented. But if I was asked to like write a play or direct a play, it'd be like I'd be going back to square one. Like, it's like I don't know how this works. Like, this is kind of outside of my world. It's kind of like tangent to the stuff I do, but it just seems like it's a different type of performance, and I'm just not sure I can cross over. So I kind of appreciate when I go to something and it's like, wow, these are the same people that are like acting my movies, but now they're like live performing. Like, it's such a different atmosphere.
It absolutely is. I feel like that's why I can't really compare directing for film or acting for film versus theater, because they're completely two different crafts. They come from the same foundation, but it's like as if I was dancing ballet and then I was dancing hip hop. While they are both movement based styles of dance, they are so different and they come from such different backgrounds. Like one comes from the monarchy in France and Italy and entertaining kings and queens, and the other one comes from the streets of New York, of people of low income and trying to find a way to communicate with each other through dance. So while same, very different, and that's why I have so much fun going from project to project, if it's film or theater, because no matter what, it's going to be different. And I think that's why I love it so much and performing so much, is because no matter where I go with it, it's just going to be a different experience every time. So yeah.
Like, I know you want to do more writing and directing. So how do you see yourself balancing that? Is it kind of like you'll take whatever comes your way, or do you want to focus more on one, or kind of juggle all the different aspects of filmmaking?
That's the thing that I'm not too sure about, because I have time to figure it out for sure, but I want to go back into writing. I think my dream eventually would be to write and produce my own work and just develop my life from that. But I think for now, I'm so content with doing all these different things at once that I'm not like focusing on one thing specifically. And I love that. I love that I am able to, go from coordinating background in a union movie to I am gonna be acting in this theater piece. It gives me um it gives the work itself so much like range, and allows me to be a dynamic performer and artist. So I'm not sure. I it's something that I'm just content where I'm at, where I can juggle all these different things. I don't have a family. I'm not planning on settling anywhere yet. So it allows me to be like, yes, of course I'll go in the middle of the woods on in the summertime and not know anyone. Again.
So out of all these things that you've done so far, like all these different avenues you've explored, which one would you say, like, which one are you proudest of?
Ooh, I honestly, just in general, um, in terms of proud, I'm just proud that I've gotten as far as I have at the age that I am. I think that when I was younger, there was this internal anxiety of this is such a unknown area of the world that I'm not used to. I'm so used to community and high school theater that I was a little anxious about putting myself out there and getting to know people and networking. It makes me really nervous going into spaces that I don't know people, and it's such a big part of the job where you are supposed to go to premieres of films that you didn't work on. You're supposed to talk to people you've never met and talk about your work, and there was just this internal like turmoil of oh my gosh, I don't know anyone. I'm recently 18 and I'm supposed to put myself out there and be like, here I am, this is what I can do, what can you give me? And I think that I'm mostly proud of the work that I've gotten so far and how far I've gotten. Just at 21 years old, I have a good chunk of work on my resume that I can be proud of, and every single project I'm proud of in different ways. So I think it's not necessarily one thing, but it's just overall the experiences that have brought me to where I am in my career. It's just, it's incredible. I think it's hard not to be just proud of myself for getting to where I am at, because I have a lot of friends who are just starting out, fresh off university, and they're just getting themselves out there, and they come to me for advice, and I'm like, I'm we're both at the same level, and the fact that I've gotten so much work from just being willing to go to premieres and to talk to people, that's I definitely, that's where I stand in terms of my proudest achievement.
So, Laura, what piece of advice do you have for people who want to start acting?
Put yourself out there and don't worry about being a show off. I feel like that's something that gets me all the time of like, oh, I'm just showing off. No. Stay proud of your work and what you can do. And honestly, just find a community that supports you, because that's the most important thing. You can support yourself all you want, but at the end of the day, if you surround by people who love and encourage you to keep going, that's going to be the end game of your career. It's the thing that's really going to keep you going. So surround yourself by people who love you and support your career, and just allow yourself to be proud of what you can do.
So Laura, how do you feel? How do you stay engaged, and how do you come back after you face a setback? How do you keep your path forward?
It's just reminding myself that the 8-year-old in me wanted to be a big Hollywood star. That thinking of that version of myself that is still within me is the thing that keeps me going. Of course, things are going to get tough, and as we keep going in adulthood, expenses get higher and paths get limited. But just reminding yourself that there's still that version of you that has that dream is enough to keep me going. Of, well, maybe I have to adapt and change what I thought would be my path, but just staying happy. And if this makes me happy and this is what I am happy doing, that's just personal happiness, personal fulfillment. it's enough to keep me going and to just look forward and remind myself, yeah, that 8-year-old still has a dream that you need to fulfill.
So what would you say is the funnest part of acting?
I love being a bitch. I love being a bitch in my characters. Obviously, not every character I play is going to be a bitch, but I think there's a fun in being someone that you're not, and allowing like the different parts of yourself that I'm not always a bad person in a film, but there's always elements of each character. Every character is complex and they're similar to you and also very different from you. So definitely just playing things that are not like me. Like Clea was just so fun. She was so catty. And it's just experiences that allow me to elevate the parts of myself that I wouldn't normally elevate.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to wrap it up here. We're almost out of time. So thank
Okay.
you so much, Laura. So maybe tell us what's next. What's next for you?
I don't know. Honestly, I think right now I'm working on just finishing up writing some shorts and a screenplay. So that's what's next for me, is just focusing on writing. But I think we might be filming Mr. Brody this summer, which I'm excited for. And
Looking pretty good. I think it's more than
yeah,
50% chance we're gonna do it.
Hell yeah.
okay. So definitely Mr. Brody then. And that's looking like that's going to be my summer. And then whatever comes my way, I keep auditioning. I keep putting projects in my calendar. So I don't have anything concrete right now other than Mr. Brody. So yeah.
We're doing a couple other movies kind of this spring that I'm sure you'll be involved in. You just haven't been made aware of it yet, but word will be coming soon.
Then whatever Brandon has in store, I'm sure that I'll be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. Other than Brandon and Higher Universe, I am kind of just allowing myself to finish school. I'm in school, so finishing that up. And yeah, I mean, it really is so inconsistent that it depends month to month. Sometimes I'll get a call and be like, hey, can you come into set right now? And I'll have to be like, sure. So it really does work like that. I think every artist that's not 0.01% of the population that can make a living making millions out of it. I think every artist has that similar setback of, I don't know what my year's gonna look like because projects come and go. So yeah, I think that what's on the horizon for me right now in terms of acting is Mr. Brody, and that's I'm not doing French this year, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Almost out of time, so we'll be seeing you again very soon, Laura. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Loved having you on the show, Laura.
I love being here. This was so fun.
So that was a great interview with Laura. I think she's a great actor and a talented person, and I'm so glad that we did one of our rare audition casting notices to find new people. Otherwise, we may never have heard of her. So
Hey, I mean, I think that's how I met you guys, is through your auditioning process. Like every now and then you just meet a random person. You're like, hey.
So I guess I shouldn't be so adverse to auditions. It's kind of weird that like I'm not an actor, so we end up seeing like 100 people reading the exact same lines, and they all kind of blend together, and it just all sounds the same. And it's like, well,
yeah,
how do you pick one person over the other when you have 15 people for one role and they're all equally
we're just as good.
It's just like, and then it ends up, it's a hard process, and it's like I'm already writing, I'm directing, I'm producing, I'm editing, and got so many things on my plate, and it's like, well, now I have to be watching like 100 videos. It's like it just puts a lot on my plate, so I've always kind of like avoided it where necessary. But every time we do it, I end up meeting great people. So maybe I should reconsider a little bit in the future.
Just have more and more auditions.
Yeah. So today for our thoughts on things segment, I was thinking we could talk about 80s nostalgia, which seems to be kind of a trend for the last, I don't know, 5 years or maybe more. I'm not even really sure if I have an opinion on it, but I figured we could just discuss it, because the 80s were depending on how you look at it, one of the best eras for movies and music, but at the same time, also one of the worst. Depending how you look at it. Like there was a lot of shitty stuff in the 80s, but there was a lot of really awesome stuff. And sometimes they're both the same. Like there was a lot of even like hair metal was kind of cool in a way, even though it was pretty bad. Like it's
Yeah,
hard
I
to
was gonna say
explain.
that it had an aesthetic, and we were just talking to Laura, and she was talking about how her stuff is so aesthetically driven. Like, if there's an aesthetic that exists that's heavily defined, it's definitely the 80s. Like I'm thinking like neon colors, like super tight clothing, super curly, puffy hair.
It was
Um,
definitely more extreme. Like you could tell something's from the 80s, whereas like say 2002 to now, like is it really that different? Like people 40 years from now, could they look back at the mid 2000s versus mid 2020s and see a drastic difference in the way people dress and the way like
I
movies
think
are?
you could probably point that out actually. Like if you did there's some markers of like a 2006 film versus a 2016 film, I think.
I think they are. I'd have to think they're more subtle though. Like I
Yeah,
don't.
well that and they've gotten even more subtler is what I think. Like 2006 we're thinking 40-year-old virgin. I'm thinking the movie where the two guys Greg Kinnear and the other guy were conjoined twins, Stuck
Oh
on
yeah,
You.
yeah.
Um I'm thinking those movies. 2016, what am I thinking? I'm thinking A Promising Young Woman. I'm thinking like sleek movies that have like super crazy budgets and have like this super fine point. Like
Yeah,
do
it's
you
possible.
get
I
what I'm
think like
getting at?
movie like trends will always kind of come and go. But if you took like a still shot from 2016 and from 2004 and 2024, like I'm not sure people will be able to tell what era it was from just from that picture. Whereas if you took someone from the
That's
60s
fair.
and the 80s and the 90s, it's all like the 80s was drastically different than the 90s. As it gets into the year 2000 and beyond, it kind of becomes subtler. Like things change over time. But I don't think like in the 2050s that people will have nostalgia for the 2010s the same way we do for the 80s now, because it wasn't just like a very specific look and feel you could look back on. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe just we need to go through some more decades to look back on it.
Oh, you wait until they come back with True Religion jeans and what else is going on in 2000? Florida, what was happening then?
Or maybe I'm just so out of touch with popular culture after the 90s that I just don't pay attention to it. But like things like Stranger Things, and there's a lot of shows that are just blatantly set in the 80s, and I in a way it's it's kind of the PC that misses that time, but I kind of see it because that was like the last era before any sort of real CGI. Like there was more practical effects. It's like you had to work harder to make a movie, it seems. I mean, not that special effects people don't like visual effects don't work hard, but
No, but the barrier to entry was slightly higher. Right now, you can like shoot a movie on your phone and upload it, like as you did,
yeah.
and be relatively successful with it, as you did. But like the idea that you could shoot a movie on your off time in the 80s, I think was less achievable.
Yeah, it was harder barrier to entry, but at the same time, and also I find like one of the things that's like as soon as you, especially in a horror movie, as soon as you like add like cell phones, basically like smartphones, it seems to kind of ruin a
It
lot.
takes away, like, then you have to explain away the cell phone in one way or another, or you have to
Yeah,
make sure that it doesn't like come back so that they can be like, well, why didn't they just call the person or record it
yeah.
or like
It's like at any
flashlight?
time you could call 911, take a picture of Jason chasing you, upload that instantly so everyone believes you. Like it's hard to explain that away. Like, oh damn, it sucks that all 12 of our phones ran out of battery at the same time. Like how do
Something
you
like that. We're in a giant Faraday cage. Shucking.
yeah, it's and that's why on like for horror show, if we had more money, it would have been set in the 80s, but we didn't have enough money to actually make it set in the 80s with all the vehicles. So we
I would
kind of just
love to
faked
see
it.
like you do horror show like 88, horror show 96, horror
Yeah.
show 77. Like
We
we
just
just
update
go
the
through the
technology each time.
decades.
So yeah, in horror show, like there was like no cell phones. They were all like old school, just like cordless phones. So we don't really
Yeah.
say when it took place. I just didn't want to put in phone because then you have to like every single scene would be like, why aren't they calling the police? Why aren't they videoing this? It just kind of like ruins it.
Takes away from it a little bit.
And even in Grotesque, we didn't explain it, but we really like there were parts where you see like modern phones, but we tried to stay away from that because
Well, and Grotesque too has an 80s aesthetic to it, would you say?
so does the first one. Like it does have I just kind of it's almost like my movies take place in like a different kind of universe where it's like technology is not so prevalent because it does like I would hate it. It just like Mildred was on her phone all the time. People are always taking pictures of her. It just kind of it just takes it away. And there are some horror movies where they go full on technology where it's like the movie's about the tech, which is fine, but it's like trying to make a Nightmare on Elm Street where it's like, look, if Freddy's chasing you, take a friggin' picture of it, and everyone, people would believe you. But it just ruins it. And I find like even now as I'm writing stuff, it's always like, okay, we're writing the scene, yeah, but that would be caught on camera somehow. Like there would be, so it's like, well, how do you explain that this instant is not caught on camera?
I
Okay,
guess
well,
because
the
that's the
next
other thing
scene,
is
how
that
do you
there's just
explain that?
cameras everywhere too.
Yeah, like every, even 9/11, 2001, even that was caught from multiple angles.
Hmm.
So it's like, so anything that happened anywhere would be caught on camera somehow. So it's like, how do you explain that away? It kind of just like cheapens it. And it's like if you ignore that, people are gonna start asking like, why aren't they calling the
Why aren't they?
cops?
Yeah.
So it's just something you have to deal with. Whereas in the 80s, it's like, yeah, that just didn't exist. You went out with no means of communication, and it kind of makes it more fun that way.
But I mean, I just watched a movie the other night that had it's called Love Lies Bleeding, and I think it's set in '89, and it has that heavy '80s aesthetic. I think people are doing some interesting things with the genre where they're making it different I'm trying to think of how Love Lies Bleeding is kind of in the '80s aesthetic, but also is like a different because it's a boxing movie and it's like a down and out kind of style, but they do things slightly different. I think like how to word this. I feel like what we're seeing now might be like the 80s on steroids. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there was
it's
an
like
80s
it's
aesthetic, but now we're gonna up the ante on that.
and part of it too is like it's how we remember it or how we think we
And
remember it.
so your the memories get more neon and more
Yeah,
bright essentially.
and it's like, and it wasn't really like that's. It's kind of like you see a lot about the. I see like almost every day you see posts about people having nostalgia about Blockbuster. It's like, man, I don't want to be the one to break the bubble, but that never happened.
Blockbuster sucked.
Like it did suck. I remember like he went like because it was a big chain, but if I remember correctly, it was owned by like a family in like Arkansas or something like that. Like it was and they were like a religious kind of people. So
Oh yeah,
they're
so they couldn't have like PG-13 movies and so
yeah,
forth.
like there were times where like a movie would have to like censor itself to get into Blockbuster. And I remember hating like everyone hated Blockbuster at that time because you'd have your I grew up in Wetaskiwin and we'd have our um privately owned video store and they would have all sorts of cool stuff. All of a sudden Blockbuster would buy them out. And it's like,
Ah,
oh
and then they
shit,
would
now all they
like
got is Hollywood movies. Like they don't have the cool indie stuff. And they were basically like a necessity. So it'd be like, 20 years from now and and the 40-year-olds then will be like, remember back in 2024 when you used to go to Walmart on a Friday night with your friends? And it's like that never happened. Like
no, it's gonna be
that
like, remember
existed.
Netflix? Man, I'm nostalgic for Netflix.
Yeah, it's like it's something that existed and you had to use it as a mean because Blockbuster was the only way to get the movies back then. But it wasn't fun going there. It was just like, okay, you got to go there to get the movie,
Sure.
hang out with your friends afterwards and watch it at your house. But that experience in itself was not fun. I think people are just having fond memories of something that it's kind of like years go by and your memory of it gets skewed, which maybe is kind of the whole way of the 80s. Like living through depending on how old you were too, whether you're a kid or an adult, like the 80s probably sucked a lot. Like there was a lot of crap in there.
Oh, there
And
was a lot of turmoil, a lot of bullshit that happened in the 80s. I
yeah,
mean, like just generally over the time, it was one of the worst times that for like it was the best time for the individual. It was the worst time for the collective, I would
Yeah.
say. But I mean, that aesthetic also lends itself to movies pretty good, I guess. You can find some pretty compelling stories. Even just the stories that came out of the 80s. I feel like there's so much craziness.
There was, and you went imagine like being, in the 70s, your heroes were like Dirty Harry. Those were the tough guys. All of a sudden, the 80s, they're like muscle head bodybuilders like Stallone and Schwarzenegger, all those guys. Like that's such a weird change. And I could see going from one to the other that you could hate it. But growing up with it, it's the first thing I was exposed to. I love that generation of Schwarzenegger and stuff.
But then you have the 90s, which is just basically a reaction to that, where everybody's like super skinny
Yeah.
and
All of a sudden, Tom Cruise is the biggest action star.
yeah.
And it's just like, so whether or not that's good or bad, like, yeah, I love Predator. I love Conan the Barbarian, like all that stuff.
I do love Conan. Conan the Barbarian is good. I love 80s aesthetic movies. This is going to sound weird to a certain degree. I love seeing movies shot in the last 10 years or so that are set in the 80s because I don't know, just like the way people remember the 80s to me is so compelling.
Yeah, it's such a, and like even with horror show, like we're putting a filter on it. We're trying to make it look like it was
Like
70s,
film
maybe
grain.
80s. Yeah, and I remember we did some tests on it and we showed it just a few people in our circle and they're like, "Oh my God, it looks so cool." Because it's like, I mean, movies now, like theoretically they're better, like they look better, the cameras are better, but you can only polish a movie so much and make it so sleek before it's not impressive anymore. It's kind of like I miss the days when it didn't look as good. It's just
Yeah,
like
honestly, the imperfection sometimes isn't the imperfection. It's the thing. It's the hallmark of what makes it like it's a style marker more than an imperfection.
yeah, and even it's like listening to modern Metallica. It's like, yeah, the recordings are better and everything, but when you go back and listen to Kill 'Em All, it's like the recordings were bad, like they're not as good. But I don't know, I kind of like that in a way. Like it just there's something missing when you make everything so perfect. Yeah, like you said, imperfections are what makes it.
Well, we could talk about that all day because yeah, especially when it comes to metal and punk music, if it doesn't sound like you recorded it in your basement, I don't know if I want to listen to it.
Yeah,
It
you kind
has
of
to
like
have that roughness to it. So our conclusion, 80s good, but
from
it's
now
also
on, every
a little
movie we
bad.
make is going to be set in the 80s. All right. Well, that was a fun discussion and a great episode. And so I guess we'll see everyone next time.
See you next time.
All right.